Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI Talk Show. I'm Asha Saxena, and today we're diving into a conversation that sits at the heart of every digital transformation. It's evolving role of data and AI leadership. And, we've seen the evolution of leadership in data and AI, and also in digital, and also new roles popping up as AI is becoming more popular. We know that data is the foundation of every modern enterprise, but leadership is what gives data meaning. How leaders show up and how leaders are looking and having these conversations becomes a true meaning. A true AI transformation doesn't really start with technology, it starts with leadership. And we hear about that, but a lot of time we struggle with how do we connect the data strategy to business purpose and people impact. So as we have these conversations on LinkedIn Live and we talk about and we bring leaders to talk about how we actually address these issues, I also see that organizations are looking at harnessing AI. We are seeing critical shift, but what they say is that the leaders are asking questions like, what can I do with AI? But they're really asking now the question, how can AI help us solve what matters the most? So the and strategy officer of ThoughtSpot, who's been a leader in the industry with tons of experience, but also an impact. Cindy, you have been a respected voice in analytics and AI strategy, a champion for data-driven culture, and I would say you are a tireless advocate for building organization where people and technology thrive together. So, with that, Cindy, I want to welcome you to the AI Talk Show. Welcome.
Thank you, Asha. So happy to be joining you. Tireless advocate, maybe a little tired advocate. Yes.
I know you travel around the globe and you get to hear clients talk about their challenges and their struggle. But before we jump into this whole evolution of leadership in the age of data and AI, just tell us a little bit about your background. And I feel like the LinkedIn community already knows you so well, but just a little glimpse of your journey before we get started.
Sure. So I started in this space as a report writer at Dow Chemical in Switzerland, coding things on the mainframe focused for Windows, led the world's first global data warehouse project. The vendors at the time, SAP and Oracle, Business Objects, said what we were trying to do was too ambitious, don't do it. There was only one book to guide us, Bill Inman's book. There were no training courses, so everything was a first. And I think back to that time because I also think with generative AI, everything is a first. So I've been a hands-on practitioner for 30 years now with my own business, BI Scorecard. I spent some time at Deloitte. I also led the Gartner research, the IT score maturity models, as well as the analytics and BI Magic Quadrant. At ThoughtSpot is the agentic analytics platform. And I work with our top customers globally on executing on their AI and data strategy and making sure it is absolutely aligned to their business strategy.
When you were talking about the journey, your journey from, the era where Bill Inman book was the only book, and
Yes.
we were all, hands down on data warehousing projects, to now the digital transformation, and now to generative AI. I mean, really, what a great journey, and how lucky we are to be there to see the evolution of technology, from just databases. And now we're back in data centers conversation, the whole GPU and how data centers are becoming popular again, to provide the power to these AI.
Yeah, and I think that going through these transformations, it gives people like us, Asha, where we have been through these chapters of like the internet and then
Right.
the cloud migration. And we know, I often say we are just at the dial-up days of the internet. I was speaking with a company from an AI startup last week, and they're, building frontier models. And some would say, why are you doing that? Like Claude and OpenAI, they own the market. Oh
Yeah.
no, like they just were the first. And if we think with the internet, like, does anyone remember Netscape? Probably not. And then they thought, um, IE would own the market, and along came Google Chrome and Safari and what have you. So I think recognizing that there is still a lot to build in this generational shift of Gen AI, I think it gives us a unique perspective.
I love your thought on that, because I think we kind of forget when we look at what Google and OpenAI, I mean, their journey and their constant evolution, and how fast that is happening, that we forget that we have, there could be new potential startups that can actually bring something more innovative. And I think great example of Netscape.
Yeah,
There's so many great examples like that in the very first, and you think that is it, and then there comes a new technology.
yeah,
When I was thinking about this topic of evolution of the role, because yes, the technology is evolving really fast, but I do also feel that the role of leadership is changing. How we show up as data and AI leaders is changing, and I was really excited about talking to you about this conversation, because I know that you've led data and AI strategy at global scales and advised countless organizations. And when you talked about tireless, the first thing that came to mind was all your travels. Oh my God, to all the different countries and talking to all these leaders. So, from your perspective, how is the role of leadership changing in this new age of, so-called intelligent technology, where we move from managing information to leading insights, and now we are here autonomous, right? The AI systems can recommend, automate the workflows, and influencing critical decision. How do leaders evolve? I mean, this is such a fast-paced technology change, but the leadership has to change too, of how they
yes.
become the leaders of this technology, fast evolving technology, and how do they lead the organization?
Yeah. And so I think it's important to talk about, let's say, the broader leadership, the leadership team of a company, and then fill in the blank: chief data and AI officer, chief AI officer, but let's say the main person who is tasked with enabling AI, and you can't do AI with data. So those might be two people or one and the same. But I think for the broader leadership of an organization, there's really two challenges that we see with generative AI. And one is culture. And I will never forget it. A few years ago, somebody said to me, a CIO said, Cindi, let's just be brutally honest here. Culture is code for lack of leadership or really good leadership. Somebody who embraces change, somebody who gives permission for small failures, for calculated risks. Now, we can't have endless investments and no return on value. But I think this is important for the broader leadership, that it's okay to say, I don't really know how AI will pay off, or what is the most important workflow that can be transformed with AI. If they are still taking a fearful approach and saying, no, don't tinker with this process. We know that we're winning in the market with this. Let's just keep it the same. That's motivated by fear. And I think, I was doing an innovation workshop with experts in data and AI, and this was about a year ago now. And I said, "How many of you know what a hallucination is? Let's just be really clear here." And half the room raised their hand, said, I think I know, but I'm not really sure. Can you go over it? That takes a degree of humility and
Oh, yeah.
vulnerability. And it's okay to say, I don't know. So starting with AI literacy at the top is absolutely crucial. Does that partially answer your question, Asha?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And I think it is such a transformational journey for leaders because they have to evolve themselves. So they
Yeah,
can't just rely upon the organization to hand them the tools, but for them to show up and say, I'm ready for being a lifelong learner, to understand and take responsibility of what's working, what's not working, and be honest. I love the example you gave of having humility to say, I
yeah,
don't know, and be able to go out and find either partners or learn the product or technology that's changing and constantly get them involved. And I know some great leaders who bring in these partners, vendors, Microsoft, Google, to make sure that their leadership is learning constantly and changing
yeah.
and evolving, which is a very crucial step of leadership.
Yeah. Okay. And so if I can do a shameless plug, I would also say, please bring in ThoughtSpot. Like my role and my team is to be our customers' most trusted partner in advising on their AI strategy. That's not just specific to one product. There's so much about the people change management, the culture, which LLMs you're going to use, where is your data ready enough, and which function or work process is really truly ready to be automated.
Yeah.
There are some where it's a nice idea, but they're really not ready.
Yeah, and I
So,
think what you mentioned about bringing ThoughtSpot or Microsoft or Oracle or any of these technology partners, you're bringing these partners because you're also learning and educating your team on all different products. So
yes.
this is exposing your leadership team or your technical and business team together. Um, One thing which I've seen in Wilda, and in our organization, we have chief data officer, digital officer, technology officer, and I see all these different roles. And what I see is that another challenge is that where does this role sits? That this
Yeah.
technology leader role sits? Is it sitting in business or is it sitting in technology? When I think about this, would be something that I feel is a big challenge in people I meet, is that AI strategy is now living in isolation, disconnected from business outcomes. A lot of technical leaders are sitting in the technical world, and then there's a gap, between business and technology. And when you're now thinking about data and AI initiative, how do you define and measure the value? Data
Mhm.
is sitting in business, or is data managed by tech? Who owns what? And this whole framework or governance practices becomes a big challenge. What have you seen in bringing this alignment of business tech leaders and also these senior leaders? Where are they sitting? What is working and what's not working? Where does things work? And what are
Yeah.
the biggest challenges you've seen?
Yeah. And I do want to clarify something though. The senior leadership, I don't want them learning the technology. I want them reimagining their business processes of where AI and data can transform it. Lee, a big mistake is having the technologists ask the business people to learn all this
Yeah.
technology. That's a mistake. It's really where can we transform? So there is a fight going on and almost an existential threat, let's say, to these, let's say, first generation chief data officers who really were more focused on governance. And they did historically report into IT. the ones that align to the business value and the business outcomes, and they have honed their business acumen. Either they grew up through the business or they've acquired those skills. Those are the ones that I think have a stronger seat at the table.
Yeah.
And they are reporting directly to the CEO or maybe to the chief operating officer. It is very much a business role because that aligns to the why for AI. The how is a different matter. And I do think these roles, there is some AI washing, just stick AI in somebody's job title. At the end of the day, everyone has to understand AI, but there might be one central team saying, here are the ethical guidelines, here are the characteristics of the models and behaviors, because AI will be baked into every software product or every SaaS application. And so it might be a central person leading the charge to say, what does good look like?
What I've seen personally also is that when you talk about business role, if it's not a CEO or COO, it could be also a business head. It could be president of the division, or it
Yes.
could be the general manager of the division. But really, I agree. If the data officer is really invested in learning about what the business needs are, so they can bring the right product. I've also seen the roles transition from digital officer, data officer to transformational officer also.
Yes.
So that shift I'm seeing is that it's not so much about just the data now, the governance becomes a part of transformation, or a larger role.
Yeah.
And some leaders, I think, we know common people who actually have multiple titles. So it's not just one title of data, but multiple titles, as the role is evolving to AI.
Yeah, for sure. And I think of the career journeys of some people that I've had the privilege both to work with and have had on the Data Chief podcast. I think of like Karen Stroop, the Chief Digital Officer at WEX. They do employee benefits and fleet management.
Mhm.
And she says, listen, I am more about the business strategy and less about the technology, but data and AI is definitely rolling into her. Or I think about Ray Boyle, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Hyatt. And so he's had an interesting background, always with data, like he worked at IRI, going back in time. But he very much aligns to the why Hyatt is leveraging AI.
Yeah. Another thing which I feel is that when people are working on these projects, they become very siloed. They run out, get these initiative, get the resources, and they become so focused on the engineering, the product, not so much of aligning to the strategy of the organization. And you somewhere forget, because you're so consumed with building the solution, also remembering how always remember to align yourself with the organizational strategy. Like, you're
Yes,
not disconnected with what the organization want. You're not in silo. Your business unit is not in silo. So aligning yourself to the bigger goal is really important.
absolutely.
So coming back to culture, literacy, and trust, I feel like we can talk about leadership, but we kind of touched upon the culture a little bit, and literacy a little bit. But when you think about culture, often makes or breaks transformation. If you don't have the culture, it becomes really challenging. And you've said it before, the technology can scale, but culture, determines the speed. What practices or mindset you've come across where you're working with organization that they're building AI literacy and trust across the organization? So I think one is literacy. The other part, very important part, is the trust. And
Yeah.
that comes from the data, that comes from the results, that comes from the outcomes, that comes from showing that these projects are actually giving you value. And it's not just executives, it's also frontline employees. It could be call center employees who are using the technology and see the benefit, and that results into the bigger outcome. How do you see leaders create a positive environment of curiosity, encouragement, or data fluency as they're thinking about their teams, or empowering their teams to use AI as they continue on this journey?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to parse there, Asha. And let's start with data and AI literacy. And I'll share some numbers. So, according to the Allen Institute, 88% of Americans fail basic AI literacy. And what does that mean? When we watch the weather forecast, we don't really understand, is that hurricane or snowstorm going to hit? It's based on past data and it's based on predictive models. I was driving home, risking it a little bit from the airport, my car charge. Is it going to make it home or should I really stop? It's just an estimate, but it also is based on deterministic analytics that we're comfortable with. There's only one answer if we started to teach people about R square and is it a good predictive model, then maybe I know what is the margin of error and things like this. With generative AI, the biggest thing we have to educate people on is that we are moving to a probabilistic world. The probability that that LLM predicted the next word accurately is it's not a sure thing. And I can ask the same question tomorrow, and the LLM will answer slightly differently. And this is a huge reset for people. So I think when you have low AI literacy, and then I really like the work from Jane Crofts, the data people, and she recently published a survey on where are we with business data literacy. 44% of all employees still cannot accurately interpret data in a live board or a dashboard or what have you. And this is really understanding how data is used in a business to make money or save money. So if we don't have those foundational skills, it's very hard for us to leverage AI in a business context. And to me, I like the term data and AI fluency because there's really different levels of proficiency. We expect different job types to have different levels of proficiency. Somebody like me, I need to understand the data lineage. I want to know which model was used. For a business person, they really just need to know what is LTV mean or LTF, lifetime value of the customer. And they just need to know the terms, but they may not need to know all the nuances. Let me pause there. Is that helpful?
No, absolutely. And I think what you speak about is just that literacy, not just about the data and the lineage, but also talking about definitely builds the trust, but also understanding what you're delivering, like the terminology. And
Yeah.
in business, different businesses will have different terminology, and understanding what their needs are. So I mean, as we unfold about leadership, I think there's so many little pieces, and how as leader, and when people get to that stage of leading the data or leading the charge of transformation,
Yeah.
it is a number of years of experience, and seeing what failed and what worked is really what you bring to the table to make sure that you continue on that path of success. And I think also reaching out and having a network, which I feel like I see a lot of that in Wilda, where members are coming together and actually exchanging what's working, what's not working, best practices, and be honest about what's not working, and understanding if you're doing the transformation going cloud or AI or data or on premise, what's working, going global, different languages, different cultures across different globe. I've seen some of the members come and talk about that, which is the biggest challenge. So I think it is about the culture and literacy, and making sure that you're bringing your entire organization together. We've done some speaker series where we bring in leaders, into organization to talk about how organizations are working. So reaching out and partnering with programs that will help your organization learn about the world of transition. So as we talk about AI, one thing which I talk about constantly is the curiosity. I was running a AI board readiness program last week, and I had 20 board members in the room. and they were hungry to learn about what they need to know when they show up in the boardroom, and how do they ask questions, and what can it really, what does it really mean. A lot of the board members are much older, and they're hungry to see where and how they can fit in this world of constant changing AI. And one thing which I mentioned was curiosity. It's really important that you have curiosity of asking the right questions, learning about what this technology can do for you, um, and most importantly, not especially in public companies, the ethics play a
Oh,
huge role in the evolution of AI and evolution of organization. So when I think about, and of course I have to watch out the time, so this would be the last topic, but I don't want to close the episode without talking about ethics. As you look ahead, AI is going to continue to refine industries. It's going to build next generation of leaders, and technical fluency will become important because business and technology is kind of merging. So you need to be curious about this technology. You don't need to know how to code because now you have AI to code, but really, I think curiosity will become a critical tool for leaders, understanding where the boundaries, the governance, the ethics, the risk lies. Because I'm getting more, I don't know if you are, but I'm getting more hacks every day on my phone, either text messages or WhatsApp, one a day, where they're asking me for a code. It's crazy.
yeah.
uh, so really thinking about how do these executives or leaders who are listening to our LinkedIn live can can become stronger as leaders, as they're putting together this initiative, thinking about responsible AI, ethics, governance. One thing which, and I'll share one quick, um, that works for me, which I've seen. I go in as a AI executive advisor to the C-suite leaders, and I'm running for a publicly traded company, a AI steering committee. And I think that really helps because now you have a constant communication through steering committee of what the guardrails are, what the priorities are, which projects will give you the outcome, measuring the outcomes in ROI. So I've seen that work. But in your experience, how do you balance the responsible AI and human centered AI? How do the leaders really show up, and how do they build this next generation of intelligent transformation, keeping ethics in mind? Because I think the whole WILDA is built on ethics. The organization really need to think about ethics and guardrails and governance. What are you seeing?
My first concern is that I don't think people are thinking about this enough early in the design process. And they're kind of deferring it or assuming that the LLM builders will take care of it. And that's not going to happen. So, or it won't happen soon enough. And likewise, regulation moves slower than the technical innovations. So, by design, the leaders have to start with just because we can do something, should we be doing something?
Right.
And that has to be baked into the culture and the product design from the beginning. I think we have significantly lowered the barriers of entry. The technology has gotten easier, but how we apply it to the business problems, that's where ethics has to be factored in. And so, we can take any example with facial recognition because it does not work with people on darker skin tones as well. Do we use it to board a flight? That sounds okay. But do we use it for policing? That has a higher risk and might unnecessarily punish some marginalized citizens. So these are some of the questions that builders have to take from the beginning. When you think about the risk of fraud, you mentioned the hacks you're getting on your phone. Listening to some of the audio of deep fakes, it's really hard to tell the difference. Is that your mother-in-law calling or not? It just sounds it's so frighteningly real. And
Yes.
so then using AI as a way to battle AI fraud, I think is also key. But this is where I watch the Stanford benchmarks for ethics and bias and safety. So it really annoyed me recently when a leader said after there was a murder suicide, when somebody used ChatGPT for too long, it induced this psychosis. And I won't pick on the company here, but they said, shall we start talking about AI safety? I'm like, start talking about it? How about let's start building and applying it? And there are differences in the race to profits from some companies. I mean, the CEO of Anthropic is always out there saying, no, we're going to be more careful with this. And they, for a longer time, have scored more high on the safety and bias benchmarks. So I think we have to watch this. We have to watch the degree of transparency. What has the model been trained on? Because also, all data is biased. So
Yes.
if these LLMs are trained on biased data sets, if we don't compensate for that with either synthetic data or different weights and biases on the feature selection, then I really call it bias at scale.
It's so well said, really. I think first thing which I'm taking away is that you have to start building in as you start your projects. You
Yes.
cannot wait till it can't be an afterthought. It has to be ingrained in the design from the very beginning. Um, and then truly believe that if we don't I talk about human upgrade. If we don't put our values, if we don't show up with the right values, we can't design the right thing. And it is good business, right? So I one of the builder members was sharing with me that one of the women on this pharmaceutical company drug development project came to her and said, I can't proceed with my research because I don't have enough data on women. and
Mm.
and the beauty was that at the end of drug development study, she found out that the results were different because she included the women's data
Yeah.
more. She went out and created the data and looked into open sources to get more data, and it was a complete different result. And
Yeah.
so for organization, it's good business to really think about putting ethics and responsible AI from the very beginning, because the results will help your organization get better. So it's good practice, good values, good systems produce good results at the end. So I truly believe that doing good becomes more important now than ever before, because these
Yes.
models are learning from us and how we show up.
Yes.
Cindy, thank you so much. I know I can continue talking to you for another hour, but I know we both have to get back to work. So thank you so much for taking time out. I am walking away with so much. AI transformation, I truly believe, is not just the transformation for technology, but it's a human transformation. It's how organization, how leaders show up. Technology can only process information, but leadership gives it purpose. And the leaders who will succeed in next era are those who blend strategic vision and empathy, who can translate complexity into clarity and turn data into action with integrity. And I think this is the fundamental value system that WILDA, the world leaders in data and AI organization, stands by. I think every member who joins stands by that. And I think we as engineers and leaders have to remember that every single day. I know we all get tied up in our day to day task and we get pulled into so many different directions, but we cannot ignore making sure that we are building this technology solutions, remembering that it has to encode the responsible AI ethics frameworks into every single piece. So, for everyone tuning in, remember AI doesn't replace leadership, it redefines it. As we continue moving into this new chapter, all of us learning with curiosity, with hopefully becoming better leaders, it's not about just having all the answers. It's about asking the better questions and empowering our teams to learn, to adapt, and lead responsibly. Cindy, thank you again for joining us and for inspiring us to do the right thing. And for the audience, keep the thought and conversation going. I think it's about having the right conversation within your organization, with your peers, and continue doing the good work. Thank you for being a part of the AI Talk Show. And we'll continue this discussion in our next episode with more interesting conversation. I'm Asha Saxena. I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Asha, and for all the work that you and Wilda do to give back as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.